Hi, I'm Andrea, and this is Mike. We are sharing our story for membership. Mike and I come from very different beginnings, yet we've seen God's hand at work in every part of our story. I grew up in a Christian home, attending Catholic school during the week and United Church on Sundays. I knew the Bible stories, but I didn't yet grasp what it truly meant to have a personal relationship with God. At 13, a friend invited me to her Pentecostal youth group. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, lively, emotional, full of joy. And in the middle of my parents' divorce, it became a safe and healing space for me. It was there on Friday night that I gave my life to Jesus.
My journey was quite different. I grew up in a non-Christian home, but in a small community surrounded by extended family who poured into me. From a young age, my aunts and uncles had a big influence on my faith. I would often sit with them at church, and their quiet, steady example helped me shape my understanding of who God is. At just 7 years old, I gave my life to the Lord and began praying faithfully that my parents would come to know Christ. Around the age of 12, these prayers were answered. My parents accepted Jesus and began living their lives for Him. Over time, God healed deep wounds and transformed my relationship with my dad in powerful ways.
We met when I was 21 and he was 24. Our first date was to the Meeting House Church in Oakville, and I knew then that I would marry him. A year later, he proposed, and 4 months after that, we were married. We were young, in love, and full of hope, but we had no idea how much our past would influence our future together. We both came from homes where healthy marriages weren't modeled. We were stubborn, passionate, and very different. The early years were hard, financially, emotionally, relationally. But there were moments I wondered if we'd made a mistake. But God used our differences to shape us and not divide us. He softened our hearts and taught us how to communicate, forgive, and lean on Him.
As we started flipping homes, buying rental properties, and raising a family, we learned to trust in God in practical ways. There were many times when the numbers didn't make sense, when we faced unexpected expenses or came up short on bills. But again and again, something I had sold or flipped came through at just the right time. We checked the account, fully expecting there not to be enough, and somehow it was. These quiet miracles reminded us that God saw us and would always provide.
As time went on, we began to feel God calling us to something deeper, not just believing in Him, but living fully surrendered lives. He used trials to show us how often our emotions clouded truth. We had to learn to trust His word above how we felt. I've always been a fixer, but God allowed things into our lives that I couldn't control, and that broke down my need to be in control. One of those moments was a strong prompting from the Holy Spirit to get my real estate license. It didn't make sense at the time, but I obeyed. That decision later became the very thing God used to provide for our family while Mike grew his business. It was also a reminder that God equips us when we follow His leading.
My career took off when I started a commercial construction company, but success came with a cost. I was away constantly, and the family felt it. At the same time, Andrea was busy growing her real estate career. We didn't realize it then, but we had made idols of productivity and provision. In 2020, God pressed on both of our hearts to slow down. Andrea stepped away from her career to teach at a Christian school. I began to return to something I loved, restoring vehicles. We found a farm and tried to buy it, but the deal fell through. A year later, out of nowhere, the opportunity came back. God had been saving it for us. Not long after we moved forward with building the shop, I began having health issues. Doctor discovered a tumor on my neck. These 6 months of waiting and praying were some of the hardest of our lives. We had to release control and fully trust in God's plan. Thankfully, the tumor was benign. And later, we found it was growing slowly, that surgery wasn't necessary at the time. We were overwhelmed with gratitude.
That season changed everything. We no longer just asked God to fix things, we surrendered. And in that place of surrender, we felt Him closer than ever. His presence was unmistakable, even on the hardest days. Today, Mike runs a vehicle restoration business, a childhood dream come full circle. He now gets to work alongside his dad, which has been healing and deeply meaningful. God has used even that passion to open doors for ministry. We've seen firsthand that nothing is wasted in His hands. Following Jesus hasn't meant a smooth road, but we've never walked it alone. That's why we want to join Mount Salem Community Church. We've been deeply challenged by Albert's message not to live as lukewarm Christians, but to live fully surrendered to Christ. We want to grow alongside others who are serious about their faith and obedient to God's calling. As Psalm 40 says, "I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. He set my feet on a rock, and he gave me a firm place to stand. To him be the glory." Thank you.